Hit record. Now I'm recording. We're recording the meeting, so I'll try to repeat questions. Simon will try to repeat questions so people can hear, and we get them on the recording. And we're here to talk about FileMaker Cloud tonight.
Great.
So first, my name is Rosemary Tg. I'm the FileMaker Community Manager, and I do a bunch of other stuff here at FileMaker, including I'm on the DevCon team. And you, I hope, all saw last week that we announced the request for proposals for DevCon 2018. And we'd love for you to submit to speak if you have a good idea, or if you have a compelling case study to present. So we're also looking for customer stories again this year, because the FileMaker in Action customer stories we did last year were a big hit and very well received. So we've expanded the opportunity for those to be presented this year. So you can find the request for proposals in the FileMaker community. And if you have questions about it, feel free to send me a message in the community or send me email. I'm happy to help and encourage people to speak. All right, so let's get started on FileMaker Cloud. So as I'm sure you saw about 3 weeks ago today, we released or announced the availability of the latest version of FileMaker Cloud. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Just, we'll do a quick review of the FileMaker platform. At the core, we have the engine that inside the building here called Draco. And then around it, we have all the clients, FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Pro Advanced, FileMaker Server, FileMaker Go, FileMaker WebDirect, and FileMaker Cloud. And these slides date from DevCon, which is why the cloud icon is still the old icon. Didn't get updated. But they all work together to support the platform. And I think some of these are from the roadmap. But if you missed the roadmap, I can do a quick review. The priorities across the board that we are always working toward are security, development tools, good mobility experience, improving the FileMaker deployment workflow and experience for our customers and partners, integration and performance. And those are the things we look at as we evaluate what's going to be in the next release, and that our product management and engineering teams use to prioritize the work that they do. Development is from the developer's point of view, so better tools for developers. And if you want the full view of like where we're going and what we're thinking about for the next couple of releases, so for the next couple of years, you can read the FileMaker roadmap document and also watch the FileMaker roadmap recording of the webinar we did a few weeks ago. And that's, again, available in the community. And if you just search in the community for the product roadmap, you'll find it.
You have a plan to have 10,000 users to use the FileMaker at the same time?
Question is, do we have a plan to scale to 10,000 users? That is not currently on the roadmap. So.
They're always wanting to be in the middle.
Yeah, we're really trying to be in the kind of the work group, small to large work group sweet spot.
I mean, what is that current? Like they're all 10,000 involved in
Same time, because even a small hospital, they have 8,000 people.
Yeah.
So of course they want all the employees use the same system.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the reason why I have the number roughly 10,000 is a number. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a vendor at one of the DevCon, NEC, out of nowhere, and they
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I just saw notes in the text that I had forgotten to share my screen. Sorry about that, everyone. So let's dive into FileMaker Cloud. So as you know, we released FileMaker Cloud 13 months ago, initially, and the rollout, and I'm going to do one thing, and mute the people on the phone. We rolled out in October last year in the US to 2 data centers in the United States. And then in February, we rolled out to EMEA with 2 more data centers in Ireland and Berlin. And then in July, we rolled out Asia Pacific to the Sydney and Tokyo AWS data centers, and also to the Montreal data center in Canada. So we now have a pretty much worldwide presence for FileMaker Cloud.
You know, when you talk FileMaker Cloud,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go on the website, there's always Amazon part of it.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about these data centers,
These are AWS.
tied in?
Yes, these are the AWS data centers in those, or the AWS presences in those regions. I mean, so AWS, I don't know if you know about the way their regions are architected. Their regions in AWS region is multiple data centers, so it's not a single point of failure. So if they lose one data center in a region, the region is still up because they have redundancy within each region.
That applies to FileMaker.
And that also applies to FileMaker Cloud when you're running in AWS. And so adoption has been pretty good. We can't share the numbers, but this is total users going over the last 13. I think this is the 12 months, the first 12 months of FileMaker Cloud availability, starting in October and then ending in August or September of this year. So generally, reception has been really good, and it's growing month over month. We're adding users, so we're pretty happy with it and excited.
Yeah, it's good.
It's good. You use it?
Yeah.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. And the places it's really helped, especially customers initially coming to the FileMaker platform, and also customers who've been on the FileMaker platform for a long time, are first of all in the area of WAN performance. So previously we had a lot of small, medium, and large customers that had a FileMaker server on their on-premise, and back when I was a systems engineer, I can't count the number of times I had conversations with customers who suddenly added a mobile or some sort of WAN component to their FileMaker deployment, and their performance was horrible because they had, either consumer grade or business grade cable internet access to their office, which has pretty good download speeds, but horrible slow upload speeds. So when you're coming external and trying to push data up to your FileMaker server or pull data down from your FileMaker server, you're doing it at 5 megabits per second, and performance was awful. And it was also a major hurdle on the deployment side for especially our smaller customers that don't have IT support to get their internal router configured with the proper ports open and port forwarding and a VPN or some other security measures in place so that they could use FileMaker over the WAN. So it's also solved a big problem in setup, deployment, and manageability. And if you've played with FileMaker Cloud, setup is pretty seamless. It takes just a few minutes. You don't need to acquire hardware, configure the operating system on that hardware, and then deploy FileMaker Server to it. You say, I just want to do this. I mean, I would still say it's not easy for someone who's completely non-technical, because you have to walk through some pretty confusing AWS screens, but it's a lot better than trying to set up a server on your own. And finally, it's affordable. You can try or get started, dip your toe in the water with FileMaker for very, very affordably without having to invest in hardware and infrastructure. And we know there are a couple of places that we need to improve. The biggest issues are, SSL certificates. Exactly. There's a level of complexity there we cannot take away, and we've tried, and we've been slowly improving. Like every release of FileMaker Cloud has improved the SSL experience a little bit.
Actually, you solve the problem.
Yes.
And now it's cloud, and you can link.
Yes. Yeah. So we've made renewal much easier. We've made acquisition and then renewal of the SSL certificate much easier. And there's also some problems when, with AWS Market Space. So when you convert, so if you sign up for the free trial and you don't cancel that trial at 15 days, you're billed hourly. And so the conversion from trial to being hourly billing is a big hurdle, because suddenly if you forget to do that, you get your first AWS bill and it's hundreds of dollars. So that is also we've had a lot of customers or potential customers be surprised by that. But at the same time, that AWS Marketplace listing has been great for us, because we have, customers have, discovered FileMaker on their own by browsing AWS and started using FileMaker without even, they don't talk to us at all. They just buy straight through the AWS Marketplace and successfully get their projects deployed. And so just released, as I said 3 weeks ago, is the latest version of FileMaker Cloud, which is in our parlance 1.16.0. And what that does is it brings the core server engine to the FileMaker 16 code base, which means you get all the features of FileMaker 16, most importantly, server side and WebDirect, save as PDF or print to PDF, which was, the one big feature that was not in parity with FileMaker Server. And we also released the trial of the data API to FileMaker Cloud, and also the new admin API, which allows you to now run server-side scripts. So you can build a schedule and run server-side scripts on FileMaker Cloud, just like you do. Well, not exactly like you do with a scheduling interface on FileMaker Server, but that is now possible. And that's what Simon's going to talk about.
So FileMaker Cloud is an actual application like FileMaker Server, but it works on AWS.
Yes. Well, so FileMaker Cloud is actually, it's the entire environment that runs on AWS. So when you purchase and deploy FileMaker Cloud, you deploy onto the EC2, the Amazon EC2 infrastructure. It encompasses using Amazon's CloudFormation technology, the operating system, all the gateway settings, the router, IP, DNS, and the FileMaker software.
Not software you could buy and just set up your own.
No. Yes. So this all happens. Yes, this all happens with AWS. We also have quite a few customers who run the traditional FileMaker server that you purchase on AWS infrastructure. So they'll deploy a Windows EC2 instance and then install FileMaker server on it, just like they would install FileMaker server on an on-premise Windows server.
Speed tests
Speed tests. I don't know that anybody's done performance testing. I mean, I think they're pretty equivalent. You do have you have some Windows over the overhead of Windows on one side, but the infrastructure overall is so good that from the network performance, the biggest bottleneck you have when you're deploying a WAN server is the network bandwidth and not all the core server hardware anyway. And the beauty of the flexibility of AWS is if you don't like, if your performance is bad, you scale up the server if you need more resources. Yeah, so that's like another core difference with FileMaker Cloud is you've got the ability built into the Cloud Admin console to add storage or adjust, scale up or scale down your EC2. Add more cores, add more RAM, things like that.
Your comparison on your FileMaker page of the server and cloud it says at the very bottom that you can't use PHP and that sort of stuff on the cloud. It doesn't say you can use WebDirect. And so it gives the impression that you cannot use WebDirect.
The impression. Okay.
On the cloud. Because you don't specifically spell out that WebDirect
is available on both of them.
But you say you can't use PHP, you can't use, other stuff. So you might just add that because I went through a long conversation with a client trying to convince them that yes, it does work, even though the spec says doesn't say it.
Okay. Because if you go to the technical specifications, it's there. All right. I will take that back to our web team and make a note.
Yeah, the technicals too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So, talk a little bit about kind of the problem statement of why did we do an admin API. So right now, with FileMaker Server, and also with FileMaker Cloud, if you have a bunch of servers, you've got one server administrator managing a bunch of different servers or a bunch of different FileMaker Cloud instances. And in order to manage them, you have to log into every single one of them. Like you can't, there's no way to aggregate that management. And what the admin API allows us to do is it gives you that data store of a way to aggregate up all the users, all the custom apps across a suite of servers. And also, build your own apps to control your various FileMaker Cloud instances. And, we saw within a week of the release of the new version of FileMaker Server, one of our partners in Europe had released an iPhone app that allows you to manage all your FileMaker Cloud instances to the App Store. So you can go find that. And with that, I'm going to let Simon take over because he has a demo all ready to go. You need to bring your power over though.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to switch the presenter here. All right.
Talk more easily. So where's the mic setup?
I think you're gonna need to switch to your sound. So I'm gonna mute myself here.
Of course, on the wrong side.
Yes.
All right, I guess probably everything's going to be a little sized, a little weird here, but we'll catch up here. So Rosemary already kind of covered a few points I wanted to talk about. Basically, we started out kind of missing a few things that at least we were interested in. Oh, actually, let me backtrack. I'm Simon Brown from Beeswax Data Tools. I work with a kind of a bevy of servers of various kinds, including a number of FileMaker servers that I manage. Some are Windows, Mac OS, and of course a few cloud servers. So yeah, earlier on we were before October, we were kind of missing a few features that were kind of critical, or at least were possible of creating a little bit of FUD as far as, you know, whether it was a good idea to move to the cloud. You know, we didn't have the data API, we didn't have script schedules. You know, FileMaker 16 came out, we didn't have the PDF features, but luckily the new release has taken care of many of those issues. I think the one thing though is, you know, we are still very much going to have to deal with the fact that it is a very different interface from the on-premise version. And so there's a lot of things that kind of moved around. So let me kind of go back here. You know, we've got a kind of a nice dashboard here that's showing us some basic information about our instance. You know, we've got our basic databases screen here showing a list of what databases we have. If there were clients logged in, which unfortunately I should have logged in here, but basically you can take my word for it. You know, we would have seen some clients there and been able to do various actions. We do have, in a sense, the sort of cloud equivalent of backup schedules, but it's a very different beast from what we have with the on-premise version. But you know, it's definitely quite good, especially as far as the fact that, you know, sort of out of the box you're getting those frequent backups that we have available. Now, of course, the one thing is we don't still, even now, although we do have access to it in the API, we still don't really have, we don't have a way of scripting schedules. So we're either going to roll our own or find some other way of perhaps that iOS app from Datamatics, I believe it is, and use something like that to create the schedules, any server-side schedules we want. So the API looks a lot like if you've looked at it, the data API. There's, you know, there's some sort of subtle differences in authentication, and of course the data is going to be a little bit different, but basically it works in a fairly similar manner. So if this is your main interest, and you haven't gotten into the data API, you know, it could be a good kind of way to sort of experiment with that, with the admin API instead. And once you've kind of mastered that, you'll probably have a pretty good handle on working with a data API when it comes to that. We do have to deal with, you know, a little bit of crypticness, and so let's actually first talk about the. Actually, hang on. I want my session to stay in effect. So okay. So what I wanted to talk about first was, of course, the really basic process of logging in. Hopefully that's big enough. Yeah, probably not.
What does bbox mean?
Oops, wrong way. Oh, bbox. It was just a name. It's the name of the plugin that I wrote, and had to give it some kind of name. So, you know, bbox was like sort of a playoff of toolbox, because I wasn't trying to implement one particular function. I wanted kind of more generic holding plugin, I can just kind of throw in whatever was useful at the time. Okay, so I'm really just using this as a way of doing the basic curl commands, I wouldn't try. You may be tempted to try using FileMaker's curl functions out of the, in the beginning, and try and work with that. And if you are familiar with how those work already, that probably, that might be a good, definitely a good way to go. But if not, there's enough sort of, little differences, little things you're gonna have to figure out using that. And if you add that on top of trying to figure out, how the API works, I think you're probably gonna find it's just a little too much. So I would recommend either just going with kind of like a basic command line, usage of curl, or you may also want to look into, there's some tools you can get. Let's see, I think I've got the page loaded. It's a tool called Postman, and there's other ones out there as well, and you can use that as a way of testing your access to the API and getting some good feedback, and it'll kind of try and help you out a little bit, at least. Curl even can be a bit cryptic, so that makes it a little bit more easy. So curl is part of the toolbox I'm going to use here. The other thing I'm going to do is, let's see, it's on my history. So what I'm actually doing here, let me go up a little bit more, is I'm actually logging into a FileMaker Cloud instance from using SSH. And the reason why, there's a particular log over there we're interested in. Although actually, I'm just going to kind of basically print out everything. So that's it's the gateway log, and that's where any problems with your requests to the Cloud API are going to get logged. So if the, it doesn't log things that are successful always. So we won't see everything, but if we have a problem, we might see that. So like right here, if I run this right now, it seems like I should see, yeah, I can see here security, administration, authentication failed, da, 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 da. So because the process, the way the process works is your first contact with the server, you have to provide some credentials. So you're going to provide a username and password to your server, and those are the same ones that you'd be using on the web console here. Now, one thing to be aware of, it's not, let me see here. You can add access to FileMaker Cloud for other users. If you go ahead, and I haven't set it up here. Again, this is just kind of like a scratch system. But if we had, you would actually see other users that have been given access to the system. But those other users, those other accounts do not get access to the admin API. Only the root user, the one that shows up right here, only that account actually gets full access to the system, including the API.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah. Sure.
I know the API is used by a lot of things, but you don't have to use an API to use the cloud, right?
No, not at all. I mean, if you can stay within the current functionality that's in this interface, you're good. And so the features that the main feature we're getting that isn't there really is just the schedule, the ability to create or change schedules, script schedules. You know, even in there's not a feature for doing backup schedules, because again, FileMaker Cloud's got its whole different way of doing that.
But there's other features too, not just the schedules. Like you can list users and you can list database.
Yeah, I mean, there's other features. Well, so there's other features in the API, but all those other features are ones that you already have in the GUI. Yeah. So I mean, if you're another part of your toolbox would definitely be this page here, which is the admin API documentation. And so that basically goes through all the different functions and their parameters, and how you need to call them. Excuse me. So, and definitely also, because in the beginning you're probably going to be using this, seeing a lot of these, you're going to want to be checking the error codes, and the error codes can either come back as an actual error code, or it comes back as some kind of result or result code, or possibly in the, let me get to the right file, right window, let's see, shoot, do this one. And of course there's no response headers for that, but I just do that. Okay, there we go. So that was a bad request. So here, not only to get an error code back, there's also a 400 error code for the response. And then let's see, we didn't get back a result. And then, whereas in other cases, you sometimes get back basically your error response as the result, but you won't see an error code. You get back an error code of 0. So you really have to kind of be on your toes a little bit if you're going to be checking the responses you're coming back. Each call tends to be kind of a little bit different as far as how you're getting your error responses. You know, partly it depends on the type of error. Like in this case, I didn't have an authentication error. It was just I was trying to what was it? I can't remember now. It was opening a file that was already open or something like that. So that, you know, is something it couldn't do. So it gave me back an actual error code here. But let's see if I can create it. I'm just going to mess up the key and run it. And let's see, no, I still got the same error. Yeah, I was hoping I was going to get back a different error to show you there, but okay. So that's certainly one issue, one kind of hurdle you're going to have to work through is dealing with that. The other kind of interesting thing we found was, so here I'm looking back more like what you would see with an actual curl call, and you'll see here it's doing authorization : bearer, and then those other values, this here would be your actual API token that you got when you logged in. But let's see if I go, not long yet. So you'll see here we are now using a session key, x-FMS session key, still followed with the same token, but just a different parameter used to specify that token. And if you use the wrong one, it won't work. So, and that is called out in the documentation, but you know it's really easy, especially if you've done a couple of them, to kind of like, you know, be pulling your hair out. Certainly, Darren did most of this file here, like 90% of it. Except for a couple little things I've added on just recently. But we were kind of both working through all the various features, trying to get them to work, and it's really interesting trying to trying to remember. Okay, well, that one we use the bearer token, and this one we use the session one, and don't forget that one's supposed to be a put instead of a get. Oh yeah, and I was going to also mention one other thing. If you have any ability to read JavaScript code, let's see if I can find it here. Another thing that was kind of helpful when the documentation was kind of a bit out of date, and so we were kind of trying to figure out what the heck was going on. I think it's in here. And no, it's not that one. It's in Gateway, I think. Oh yeah, there it is. This is going to be a little hard to see. Oh, shoot, might have to use. Let's see. I'm trying to remember with V how I page down. I've forgotten how I do that. Darn it. See if I can find it. Well, if you go into this file, and it's FileMaker server, gateway, admin server.js, and let's see if I can find the right spot. Yeah, I can't even use find. I can't even remember how to do a find in V. Well, I'll leave that as an exercise for you guys. If you happen to hit the right part of this file, basically you're going to see is a list of all the API functions, list databases, list clients, all that kind of stuff, and then the parameters that are expected for those actions. And so, like I said, at one point the documentation was a bit out of date, and the parameters weren't listed correctly. But by tracking it down in this file, I was able to figure out that the correct parameters that were needed for that command to work. So let's see. So we have about 18 commands, and a lot of these kind of parallel what was in the FMS Admin command. I don't know if anybody of you have really made use of the FMS Admin command that's on the on-premise version. It's functionally, it's fairly similar to that. There are a few things that are kind of not in the Cloud API that particular feature did. But the Cloud API does allow as Rosemary was talking about, it does allow the possibility that you could have control over multiple servers, using a web API, allowing you like a single point of control, for instance, or perhaps a way for other systems to, a totally non-FileMaker system to ask FileMaker to perform a script or something like that would be another, something that you might be able to do with the API right now that we wouldn't have been able to do quite as easily using the FMS Admin command, and certainly not with the GUI. So I guess let's actually just kind of look at a few. So I guess I'm gonna switch back to here. Yeah.
So you could write a schedule to run a script, but could you run a script just one-off instead of like having a schedule? But you have to create a schedule to run a script.
Well, yeah, you always have to create a schedule to run a script. I guess there's two ways you could do that. What you're asking for, one would be maybe to have kind of like a placeholder schedule, and then you just update it every time you wanted to do that. So you just update it with the correct script and credentials. for that particular database file, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's, using another call, you can actually kick off just a single run of that script or of that schedule. Yeah, exactly. And then what is it? You go down to the folder icon, I guess it is, and then you run once or something like that. Yeah, so it'd be basically the equivalent of doing that. Or the other possibility is yeah, you just sort of, every time you want to do that, you just create a new script from scratch. Yeah. And you know, I guess I would probably go with that. Probably go that route, just to be on the safe side.
You can't make a schedule active or inactive.
No, you can. Yeah, you can disable and enable a schedule, but if you want something to, well, I guess if you set up the schedule with the runtime that was like 1 minute from when you created it, and yeah, but it seems like easier to just create it disabled and then manually ask it to run. Seemed like the better route to me. Okay, so yeah, like I was saying before, you're gonna have to log in. So this is all kind of nicely showing you here, and then this was actually a retrofit from something Darren did to work with the data API. So, you know, like I said, in a few cases here, I just sort of changed a little bit of the language in a few places. It's basically almost exact same functionality that happens in this case to be doing stuff in the admin API. I mean, I think Darren did do some other work as far as modifying the scripts, the curl function slightly, because of the difference between the data API, as I recall, there isn't like that issue of like always having to be sure how you're authenticating, how you're supplying the token. I think it's more, as I recall, it's more consistent in the data API. So that was kind of a difference here that had to be dealt with. Anyways, so like I said, the initial contact with the system, you're going to have to supply it with some actual credentials. They'll have to be root credentials, but from then on, all your calls are going to be working with a token to do that. So, you know, the call is very much like what you see here as well, which looks very much like it did in the curl command. You know, basically just, you know, imagine you typed curl here, but here you can see some differences because we're using the FileMaker curl functions from insert URL. So there's a little bit of difference there as far as how you're supplying some of the parameters from an actual curl command. But anyways, and then we get a result back. So of course, when we're logging in, pretty simple result. We're really just getting back, all we're really interested in is the token. So we just keep going with that. So of the non-schedule related functionality, that's all nicely laid out here. The one thing, actually, I think I misspoke here at one point. I think I actually said there was a way to list clients, and there is, in a sense, a way to list clients, but the only way you're going to be able to actually know comprehensively from the admin API what clients are on your system is by actually doing the list databases command. Well, again, of course, unfortunately, nobody's logged in right now. But we'll get some information about the clients there normally. Oh, I'm sorry, up here as part of that array of values. So if you wanted to know all the clients on a system, then it looks to me like the only way you'd be able to do that would be to basically pull every database and make sure you've gotten every client, and then kind of mash that all up into one list and go from there. But listing all the databases is easy. You know, that's just a standard functionality, standard piece of functionality. You're going to be working not with names, which is a little bit different than, say, the FMS Admin command, where in many cases you might use the name of something. In most cases, this is going off of a numeric ID. Which command? Oh, Darren logged into the, okay, you logged into the file. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, there we can see Darren's connection, and we get, you know, very similar detail. Actually, more detail, I think, yeah, maybe a bit more detail than we would have gotten with, say, the FMS admin command and the -s option if we were listing clients. Yeah, you know, actually, I don't know.
So this is not that type of version. You try to no license and stuff like that. You don't
Oh, the FileMaker for Teams license. Yeah, okay.
Probably if you're using FileMaker Go or FileMaker Cloud Direct, you'd also see through there.
Uh-huh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that.
Yeah.
I've heard so many different people. This is the easiest version. You usually change your name.
Oh, you know, actually, that's an interesting question. I just noticed tonight when I was looking at the system. It's like, well, wait a second, why it's at .40 when it should be at .55 when I was checking the system. So it's so yeah, it is slightly behind.
Summarize just what.
Oh yeah, for the people who maybe didn't hear. So we were talking about the concurrent value right here, and so it says concurrent is false for Darren's connection, and so apparently that is due to it is related to the license type. Although, so the new name would not be concurrent; it would be thin license. Oh, team. Oh, team. Oh, that makes total sense. Okay. So team license is false. So that makes sense because, yeah, Darren is probably using a site license for his copy of Advanced, which I think is not even available as a team license anyways, right? Sounds right? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, so we get some other nice kind of things here. Now, it kind of brings up one thing, which is we don't have a way from the API to get any kind of log data. So you can't, for instance, ask the API for the access log, the contents of the access log, or the contents of the event log. So, you know, if you do want to get some information on the status of the system, you know, you have to kind of get a little creative as far as like parsing out some of this information. Now, kind of out of the realm of FileMaker, but you know, you can go into your your AWS setup. So I've got like, what is it, 4 or 5 systems on this account. And so you can, let's see, remember somewhere. So, you know, you can do some kind of, if you go into the CloudWatch section, you can do some kind of like basic, you know, monitoring of your servers from there. Some of them are pretty easy to set up. So definitely worth checking out. Others are kind of get a little bit more complicated. The other kind of challenge with AWS is it seems like they're constantly moving things around or changing things, and and so it's always kind of hard. It's a challenge to keep up sometimes. So yeah. Anyway, so that's that was listing the database, listing the databases. Which is an aside, we also get client information as well on there.
So is that the ID number 1?
Yeah, I believe that would be yeah. So like I could using the disconnect client or message client. I don't know. We can see.
Does that client work with OneDrive?
I believe it does, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember what it looks like, but yeah.
So by pressing that button, you just send
So Darren should have gotten a message. Yeah, because we got an error code of 0 and a result of 0. So, although, you know what? I don't know what Darren, how Darren wired up the message content.
He did not get this.
Okay. You know what? I think what we might be missing here is maybe we're not.
Where's that? What's that little icon next to it?
Okay, so that's kind of my attempt at here, kind of like documenting how you would what parameters you're going to be passing. Oh, okay. Well, no, actually it isn't. Or yeah, oh, the button. Yeah. What?
Slide the window over just a little bit.
Okay, that's weird. Okay. All right. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, that was just my attempt here to kind of, and the other thing I was kind of throwing in were, I hadn't actually gone through all of them yet, but I was just trying to create a list of all of the sort of like typical errors that you might get with these kinds of, with each of the different commands. So like this one, as far as I could tell, and that was the list databases command. As far as I could tell, there really wasn't like a typical error code that I would get, but I'd certainly a few times where my token had expired, and so I got back a result code of 9, and that would be this value here. So instead of being a 0, I would be getting a 9 back as the result there. Like I said, in many cases, you can also probably have to move this over. In many cases, I could have also maybe checked out the response headers as well. But I think you're going to find you're going to have a much easier time, I think, parsing either the result code, the result value, or the error codes instead. So certainly I would think if I close the file, Darren's going to get a message.
Darren said it was working. You might have broken it.
Well, that's possible. Okay. I don't know how I would have, but okay, that's quite possible. Yeah, and unfortunately, it isn't one of the, I don't think it's, I keep hitting the wrong thing for that. Don't think it was one of the ones I'd gotten in here yet. No, I hadn't. Shoot. Oh, I did the wrong thing again. Okay, so yeah, so you're going to have to again also if like let's say you want to be able to close a file named ABC, you're actually going to have to do 2 operations. You're going to have to do a list operation, find out what the ID is for the database named ABC, grab that ID and use that as your ID when you actually close the file.
Do the IDs change? Like let's say, I mean, from one session to the other, will that ID always be ID 1 for that database? Or
for one admin cloud session, or I mean, basically anytime. Yeah. Until you restart. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of where I was going.
Oh, okay.
Although it's, yeah, because I think it sort of basically goes in sequence. So like if I closed the file and then I uploaded it again, it seemed like it got a different number in that case. Okay.
Oh, it's like,
Oh, even just opened, even if,
it's like the script sequence number? It's like, it generates a new. Until you restart it.
Open all the files in the same order. Files that have the same number. As you start adding files.
I mean, does a number get generated every time you open a file? So meaning like if I open and close the same file, it gets a different number?
Well, if you just open and close through.
oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. That was.
If your server has 2 files, and it's always going to have these 2 files, you could always count on perhaps the IP would be the same for those 2 files.
Yeah, unless you restart a server, maybe yeah, it's only using the file system to get the list of files. Once the file system is pretty good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It shouldn't be too hard to walk through the list of the database list. So I would definitely recommend doing that if at all possible. Because the interesting thing with cloud is that there's multiple ways that your system is basically almost rebuilt from scratch. So right here, of course, I can't quite highlight it, but the upgrade, if you hit the upgrade button, that basically is building a new system from scratch. There's also, where is it? Should be right in system configuration. There's also refresh. Same with that. If you did that action, and maybe somebody else could clarify for me, but it seems like sometimes when you see updates and notifications where in the past, at least certain of the updates that have popped up there that weren't considered upgrades would also result in basically a whole new system being built when I applied those updates. So that was at least, so again, at least my experience in the past, that seems like what happened. So yeah, in other words, a lot of chances where, yeah, you could end up with a reboot. Yeah, and in addition to, actually, I guess that's another point about that, kind of diverging from the API here a bit, but is the, where is that? Is that under the updating? I can't remember now which screen that's on. Oh, the auto maintenance enabled. So yeah, the system itself may decide, hey, we need to do something. We're going to rebuild your OS at that point and reboot. Yeah.
Is there a way to see the log activity on the admin API? Like how in the FileMaker server you have the ability to look at the data API activity?
Oh, well, I mean, other than what's showing up in the gateway log, I don't think so. Oh, yeah, you could do that. Yeah. Yeah, and then was it instance settings or storage settings? Where is that? Instance settings. No, subscription center. Okay. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So the gateway log would like I said, it doesn't show you all events, but certainly any failed attempts for sure will show up in that log. So actually, let me see if I can get back to that.
Does the AWS manager, because I know this is a new database, does the AWS manager show up?
Of that activity? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't guarantee it, but I wouldn't be surprised if you had the logging set at a high enough level that you could at least log the connection. But you wouldn't know, too much about what that connection was. But you would know that IP address number, blah blah blah, connected to your system for transferred this many bytes or something like that. But yeah, we wouldn't know too much more about that. So yeah, looking at the authentication, the gateway log is really the way to go. And FYI too, the way that in order to do that, you do have to go into the EC2 console and change your. Actually, I guess you got to create a new. I'm going to get to it this way because I can't remember where it went. And then go here, and it's not in. Yeah, inbound rules. Okay, so actually not. It's that one. Okay, so in the security group, you basically create a new security group or modify the existing security group, and you have to add in the SSH access in order to be able to connect to it the way I'm connecting to it here using SSH, because by default SSH access is blocked with the security profile that the security group that Cloud comes up with. Oh, and interesting too here is, actually I didn't realize that was in this log. I guess that was his client timing out. Oh, that's the event log. Oh, okay, that's why. I was kind of a little surprised to see that there. So anyways, we're gonna have to list databases. It's gonna be your friend. It's gonna be a source of a lot of the information that you might have about your system. From there, you can figure out what either your file ID is or your client ID that you want to operate on. The scheduling, yeah, let's get into that for sure. Let's see. So hopefully you guys can see that. Let me actually zoom in a little bit more, maybe. So Darren has kindly created some schedule for us.
Darren said that if you get this schedule creation to work, and there's a script in the tasks that creates a record that you can run on the schedule. Right now on the schedule, it's just single run.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the result of listing the schedules, and so we've got basically some information on the scheduling. Who, if anybody is going to get an email about it. There's that false enabled, and in this case it's false, saying that the script we've created the script, but we're not enabling it.
You mean the schedule?
The schedule isn't. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, not the script schedule.
Right.
Yeah. And so here's some more details, and let's see. I guess I can't really quite get this on the screen I wanted. So if I go back over here, see that? That's basically what it looks like in the old, or I shouldn't say old, on the on-premise version. On the on-premise version, you know, these are basically the options that we had. We could set the script name, and then once we set the script name, we could optionally pass it some kind of parameter, and then we could set a time limit, how long we allow it to run before it gets aborted or not, depending on what that extra flag is down there, whether we should abort the schedule. So that all kind of, oh, and also this one. So this varies a bit, of course, depending on what kind of scheduling you were using, but using here the daily scheduling as an example. You've got a start date, you've got possibly an optional end date, and a start time, and maybe even have some repeat parameters. So
He said that you can create a schedule, put the name in the global schedule name if you want to.
okay.
Did I misunderstand? I thought at the beginning you said that AWS or the cloud wouldn't run schedules, and you'd have to have an out-of-box to run schedules.
Well, in the beginning, earlier versions of cloud, we didn't have any way of doing schedules, and we do now through the API, but we don't have a way of doing it in the GUI. However,
So if you want to set up any schedules, you must use the API to set up schedules that will run on the cloud.
yeah. And like you said, you could have worked around it by like having a bot or something like that with an on-timer script or something. Might have been a way to kind of work around it, but yeah, if you're doing any kind of server-side scheduling, yeah, this is definitely going to be way better. So again, we pretty much have all those details here. So as far as I know, I don't think there's anything that I noticed that was missing compared to what we're used to with the on-premise version. We may have to kind of figure out some kind of interesting things like how does the days of the week, how does that value work? Might take a little bit of puzzling out. Especially, even sometimes in the GUIs, you can get into some kind of crazy scheduling scenarios. A schedule that runs every 3 hours, but only runs for a period of 5 hours, and only on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it's bad enough as it is.
There's a question from Darren.
From Darren?
Are schedules going to be added to the GUI web application?
We don't really know unless somebody here wants to comment. I mean, the best guidance we have to go with at this point is what's in the roadmap, which does touch on a few points related to this. But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and find out. Yeah. I mean, so far, really, that for a GUI, I think what Klaus has done, and where is that? There it is. Or actually, this is the one on the screen. So I was kind of surprised. I actually expected a bunch of FileMaker developers to jump right on this with like a FileMaker file that would be doing this. But so far, as far as I know, nobody else has done it. And he actually went and did a full-blown, iOS app that, as far as I can tell, implements every piece of that API. And Klaus is actually the person we were talking to a fair bit, Darren and I, when we were trying to work out some of the little nuts and bolts of how the API worked. Because he had already worked out a lot of it himself, getting this off the ground. So yeah, definitely a good thing to look into if you are looking for a GUI for doing your script scheduling. Let's see. So yeah, I guess we could go ahead and try I did this a while ago, but I must admit I kind of hadn't done it with this. Scientist. And I think it's just going to create it with the whatever default options, yeah, Darren had set it up with. So let's see.
List the schedules again to see if it's listed.
I will, yeah. So let's see. We get looked like that.
I guess it listed it already.
I don't think
It says Simon
so.
Test right
Does
there.
it?
Yeah, right there.
Oh yeah, down there. Oh okay. Oh, I didn't. He's built in a refresh for us.
And then what does that script do?
All right. Well, let's see. So let's look at this. This should be the first one. Oh, you know what? It must have. But wait a second. It almost seems like it renamed the one that was there already.
ID is 3, he said. So you have to look at ID 3.
Oh, okay. There we go. Now I'm seeing more. Okay.
There it is.
Yeah. Hang on. Let me scroll over there. So yeah, I mean, the advantage of using probably something like Postman too is it makes it a little more easy to kind of like digest all this data that you get back and try and figure out, you know, what is find the parts you're actually interested in. So, all right, so there's that one right there. So that was the first one that I created. And so, yeah, it's got daily days 1, days of the week.
So he said put in 3 in your schedule number and run it. And it should create a task in the tasks database by running that script. So run that schedule.
Oh, okay. Well, let me log into that task database, which.
How would you modify that? You can't just modify it over the browser.
Yeah, no, the way this, yeah, that was actually something else I wanted to kind of plug in was a few parameters here as well. Would have been nice to kind of play around with it a little bit, but yeah, it's basically, if we look at it here, see that it's part of this let statement. And so you can see that there's like the task type is 5. There's a start date. You know, the target would be the file, as I recall. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the file. You know, the name. And then, you know, some other stuff that you need to do, like the session key and stuff like that. That's basically standard with any call that you have to do. So let's see. Yeah, I was going to try and see the. Yeah, I hadn't opened it on this system, so hang on. Let's see here. Oh, why am I doing browse? Yeah. Let me see here. Can't even find it. There we go. I think we had it. Yeah, there it is. I can't remember if I reset that. Oh, I haven't reset that yet. Okay. Okay, so we've got 5 records in there right now. So I'm going to give that a shot. Oops, schedules. And we're going to run schedule number 3. And we got back a result of 0. And oh, you're logged into the file?
Yeah.
Why do I keep changing applications?
There it is. 6.
And now I got 6. And there it is, November 10th. Not sure why we got.
Is that Greenwich time?
Well, yeah, the servers do tend to run on Greenwich time, so yeah. Yeah, so I guess it must have been using the server timestamp instead of the client timestamp.
But where's the server?
Well, this server would be up in Oregon somewhere,
Oh, I see.
but it's still on Greenwich time. Yeah, yeah. In fact, if you go over here, you can see there, or even
Oh,
here,
it's 3:30.
it's November 10th, Friday. No wonder I feel so tired.
I mean, yeah.
I think that's about it then. So yeah, it's not something for the faint of heart, but if you're motivated, you know, or you have a particular task that you're interested, you know, rather than trying to implement every feature, I think it's quite doable. And like I said, it has the bonus that if you do figure it out, you're gonna have a big leg up on if you ever need to work with the data API, because it's going to be a very similar interface you're going to be working with and similar kind of features. And I think otherwise, you know, I don't know, maybe if nobody really steps up to the plate, you know, maybe, who knows, maybe we'll get around to, I think for sure we'll end up being able to, either Darren and I can hopefully finish off his file and into something that we could, you know, post at the very least. So it's at least something you could use to kind of bang away at it. I'll definitely update my examples in the bbox demo file, which I can at least get one update probably out tonight on that. So you have some examples, and then you know, stay tuned. Like I said, I'm kind of really surprised that somebody else out there hasn't already, you know, had already gotten good using the curl calls and everything, and the data API hasn't come out with a FileMaker file that might be a way to kind of give a little GUI to some of these things. But otherwise, there's definitely the iOS app you can check out. So, any questions before we wrap up?
So it sounds like using this particular API, robots are back, or at least as far as the cloud is concerned. Robots are back.
Well, I think it's still you know, it's much better than that, because you know, it's not like you're trying to keep a FileMaker client with a constant connection to a system that's trying to, you know, kick off scripts. You know, it can be, you know, a Windows server, a Windows scheduled process. It could be a cron tab job on Mac OS or Linux. You know, it could be a Python script. It could be a shell script. It could be a PowerShell script.
Still
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, basically any automated process.
it's you have pointed it at the target. It's the one that actually has all of the scheduling sense, regardless of the technology that built into it. If you use task scheduler, you can execute different kinds of things through that. Electronics, you know, like on a Mac or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a step removed. You're not running those schedules on the same system as the FileMaker server, but you know, I think most of us who have at least FileMaker server probably have at least one other server kicking around somewhere that can do these kinds of things. And I mean, it's not, if you can deal with the fact that you might have to replace it every time you do an upgrade or something like that, you know, you can log in via SSH, and you could set up a little cron tab entry on your cloud system as well, and kick it off from there even. Yeah, it's just unfortunately, as soon as you do like if a refresh or an upgrade, there's pretty good chance those are going to be gone though, and you'll have to push them back, restore it back on that system when you're done. So that's yeah.
terminal and then perform script on the server to do a curl command internally to the admin API. Do whatever things you want to have.
Oh yeah, to reconfigure things. Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Probably do all of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty interesting. Like the fact that you have components now that you can, get the results back, manipulate them, and then, send them and, regenerate schedules or whatever. I mean, that capability we never had before. The ability to kind of manipulate them. And
Well, I think,
send them.
yeah, I mean, the FMS admin command was surprisingly powerful. There was actually a lot of stuff you could do with that. But it does seem more natural to me, yeah, working with it this way for some reason.
And then what, so commands like running a shell command before and after, have we lost that capability?
Yeah, oh, that's true. Yeah, there's no more system scripts.
Okay.
Or system schedules.
So you can do that on Amazon Web Services. You can run other processes, or would you have other features within the Amazon cloud to do that kind of thing?
I don't think there's anything in the most of the AWS infrastructure for EC2 is pretty platform agnostic, which means also that it doesn't have it doesn't reach in like that to the OS. So you can find out lots of things about like network usage, CPU usage, and things like that, or disk usage, but you won't be able to find out something that OS specific. I mean, I could be wrong. There's AWS is always full of surprises, but
VMware Sphere, you actually installed the VM tools, and that is the thing that allows you to update the OS.
yeah, in a fair number of ways, yeah. Although even that, I don't think there's like a way you can't like trigger a, for instance, a shell script from vSphere.
I think for remote shell, you can go in there and change the set up the problems and stuff like that. The problem is you pointed out the auto update stuff. Any of those updates, wipe all of any of those
Yeah.
You could get it to work for a little while until an automated update where you upgrade to the new version. Because when we switch out the VM, we're pretty much taking the entire repeating all the settings.
Yeah, and you could use something like Chef or something like that to push all those in an automated way, push those changes back, if they were to go away. With the caveat, though, that, like, for instance, I mentioned how in SSH I had to recreate the, had to modify the network security group in order to allow SSH access. So I believe that's also something that gets blown out when the system gets rebuilt, is you end up with the default security settings at that point as well. So you'd have to go in and add that back in. That may also be something that Chef, for instance, does, or could do at least. But probably getting, if you've only got like 2 or 3 servers, it's probably probably easier, yeah, just to have like a FileMaker script or something, that you could kick off and do that instead. Because plugins are one thing that will persist across those rebuilds. So
the FileMaker update runs, do you have to reinstall all these schedules? Do you have to recreate them, or do they?
Most configuration is. Yeah, it stays.
It stays, but
there's a whole bunch of different volumes. There's like the image, and then there's Unix put things in a specific directory. So the things like the config files are really sitting on a different drive that is not local. So it's all linked together, and that's why the cloud is so much different than the server. So you can only those different parts together to make the cloud environment. And you just swap out certain parts of it automatically. That's why the backup is so much faster. All the stuff we back up is on one volume, which is different than where some of the big cloud operating system.
Right. But if the system update runs, then you have to recreate all these schedules. Or is that
Change
also?
anything inside the system that isn't stuff that we manage for you.
So you can see on this instance, there are actually 3 volumes mounted. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's ones for data, ones for settings, and ones for the OS. Is I think how it breaks out. So when the system gets rebuilt, it saves 2 of them, the ones with the data and the ones with the settings, but the OS one just goes away, and you come back with a new version of the OS and the FileMaker binaries.
Okay, how do they handle the refresh if people are logged in?
Well, it will disconnect everybody. Yeah. The exact behavior. Yeah, I'm not sure actually. Now that you mention it, like, do they get 2 minutes to log off, or do they get 10?
Do you get notice if they're going to refresh it tomorrow?
Once you create the button, it's you can make all.
But if you have it set to auto,
No, the auto has only happened if there's no user.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. That was, yeah.
Oh, okay. So just during the auto, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, I can't remember the exact original question, but I guess the question was if you do a refresh, but then also if you have the system set to do auto maintenance. Oh, okay. So yeah, what happens if there are any connected users? And the answer was it's not going to do maintenance, the auto maintenance. It's not going to do that if there are connected users. But I do know that if you force it to do a refresh or an upgrade, that one will kick users off. I just can't remember how quickly it kicks them off, but my recollection is it definitely kicks people off when you do that. So I guess it would probably be wise, especially before you're like totally clear on the exact behavior, would be, yes, send a message, of course. I think the interesting thing too with the cloud is, it's kind of a little different for a lot of us, in that it's a lot more likely you're going to have a server with users that could potentially be, really spread out. And you might see that sometimes in, large companies anyways, but, it's even, even with a couple of clients we have that are small, the ones who have been interested in it in particular are the ones where they have, users spread out all over the place. And so, you've got one guy in New York and one guy in, San Diego or something like that, and, different time zones and everything. So it always makes, communicating server related issues a little harder. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? All right. Well, I'll definitely, like I said, I'll definitely be doing some updates, and I'll check in with Darren, and also for the B-Box version of those calls, and then I'll check in with Darren, I guess, and see what else we need to do as far as getting his his API demo file publicly accessible, and I guess we'd probably put that out on probably as part of a blog post, I think, or something. So check out blog.beeswax.net, and hopefully we'll have some updates for you somewhat soon, maybe in a week or so in that regard. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you. I have sort of a general question just about the cloud service. So you can do monthly licensing for FileMaker.
Yeah.
So
Right?
about the
But If you
there's
have your
one thing you
database
show about the
24
error.
hours a day,
Yes, the
even
bear
though
That's
and the.
fixed.
Oh, so is that going to be
Yeah, the same. Always use bear.
all the way through?
Right.
Ah, okay,
That's
wonderful. Yeah, yeah.
You're
'Cause-
using the ETS, so I noticed that.
Ah,
That's the
okay.
bug we have.
Ah, okay.
It's an early version. So there's some few bugs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that